My name is Emma, and before I get into my takeaway, I want to ask you a question. What is something that you have to do? It can be any admin-related thing that feels like a chore, something you have to do every day, every month, every year, and if you could avoid it, you would. Think about it. I can guarantee you, every single one of you can come up with something. For some of you, it could be filling out timesheets, sorry billings, and for others, it could be things like shopping for groceries. Now, I possibly have a solution for these problems, and I say possibly because it might not. It's something that can be used almost anywhere, but if used incorrectly, you'll continue to have these chore-like activities. Gamification. What is it? Gamification is the application of game concepts and mechanics to non-game contexts. It is a tool that we use to engage users and change the behavior when they use these systems and services. And when we do this, we use the best game underlying concepts and mechanics from games. All you gamers listening to this, I possibly just caught your attention. But what it is not is making everything into a game. But I will use the concept of a game to explain the idea of gamification a bit better. Human beings invest about 3 billion hours a week into playing online games. Why? It's because we're not positively stressed enough in our daily lives. Emphasis on the word positively stressed enough, because yes, we're all stressed, but we're not positively stressed enough. So we all engage in games and challenge ourselves for the fun of it. This can be things like online gaming, games on your phone, puzzles, chess, anything, even things like sport. Participating in games is harder than sitting around and doing nothing. So that's the twist. Everyone thinks we need to make things as easy as possible for a user, but gamification doesn't necessarily use this theory. Gamification aims to get users into a state of flow and keep them there for as long as possible. The concept of flow was developed by this guy. If anyone can pronounce his name, kudos to you, because I can't, and I'm not going to embarrass myself anymore today. Let me use this graph to explain. The more challenging we make things for people, the more anxiety they'll feel towards tackling those challenges. The more skills people have, the easier things will get for them, and the more likely they are to get bored. So our brains go into a state of flow when we're in a place between anxiety and boredom. And games and gamification need to meet in the middle of these things by making things challenging enough and making sure users have enough skills to endure those challenges. By keeping users between the states of anxiety and boredom, users enter a state of flow, and we're therefore able to maximize the engagement as well as the satisfaction users have around that experience. Entering a state of flow allows users to lose track of everything that they're focusing on around them and heightens their engagement towards what they're focusing on. Gamification keeps users engaged through intrinsic and extrinsic reinforcement. Extrinsic reinforcement refers to the physical or visible things rewards that are offered for completing a task or a game. This can be things like badges or points. Intrinsic reinforcement, on the other hand, refers to the satisfaction and enjoyment that users feel by simply seeing the success that they're gaining within a game. It creates a personal desire for a user to keep mastering and exploring whatever they're engaging with. By using these types of reinforcement, it means that when a user is faced with a challenge, they achieve and complete that challenge, and their brain releases dopamine. So users go back to that challenge and get themselves into a cycle of challenge, achievement, pleasure, challenge, achievement, pleasure. But the cycle can't stay on the same difficulty forever. Otherwise, users begin to get into a state of boredom. Whatever we're designing needs to become more difficult in order for users to stay in the state of flow. So another concept that gamification uses to keep users engaged is by increasing the ability of a user. Gamification has the ability to increase the ability of a user by constantly increasing the challenge that users are faced with. So these two concepts of intrinsic and extrinsic reinforcement, as well as increasing the ability of a user, come back to this idea of flow. Remember, challenge, achievement, pleasure, then we increase their skill. Challenge, achievement, pleasure, then we increase their skill. So we need to find a particular balance of what is challenging to a user so that they're not getting into a state of boredom, but also not making it too challenging that they're unable to engage and they lose interest. Now that we've started to understand the science of engagement behind gamification, let's start to get an idea of where gamification is used around us in our everyday lives. Because it really can be used anywhere, like marketing, business, or anywhere in our society. Gamification within apps for non-gaming purposes is increasing more and more every day. Duolingo is a good example of this. It's a language learning app that has different courses that teaches over 39 different languages. Now, anyone could go and find any other app that teaches languages, but what Duolingo has done differently is they've used effective use of gamification to keep their users engaged. They've made use of things such as leaderboards and leagues, where users can be promoted and demoted onto different levels. And obviously that sparks an emotion in users, because you'll be proud of yourself when you get promoted and want to continue to getting promoted. Or if you get demotivated, you'll want to work harder to get back to where you were. They also use things like progress bars, but in their case, the progress bar actually decreases if you don't engage with the site for long enough. Learning a language requires constant practice. So users are encouraged to make sure that they're coming back to make sure that their progress keeps up. They also use many different things like XP or experience points. And you can see other users XP to give yourself a bit of a challenge and get a bit competitive. But the last thing I specifically want to mention is how they use streaks. Basically, how many days in a row you visit the site. The longer a user streak is, the more exciting it is, and the more pressure there is not to break it. Users are rewarded when they prolong their streak. Duolingo has really effective ways to make sure users stay engaged and also stay in the state of flow by giving them a challenge and an achievement and then pleasure. And then they keep making those things more challenging and they go back into that cycle of challenge, achievement, pleasure. Another example is loyalty programs. A lot of coffee shops and restaurants make use of loyalty programs to keep their users engaged and coming back. Seattle, for example, they challenge you to get something like 9 coffees. And on the 10th coffee, you get that one for free. You feel like you've achieved something and now they've got you engaged. You'll keep buying their coffees and you know in 9 coffees time, you're getting that one free. Retail stores like Woolworths, Checkers, and Pick and Pay all give you their cards to swipe. And they give you rewards and potentially savings on items. The one that I personally engage with is Discount, and I swipe my card every time I go there and earn points or savings. And every few months, one kind cashier will offer me my 14 Rand that I've saved. That 14 Rand in that moment feels like $1 million. Again, challenge, achievement, pleasure. They've got me engaged. Even though it might not feel like much of a challenge, the challenge is to come back and keep spending, but also to be patient, because I can't expect to go back there tomorrow and get another 14 Rand. These loyalty programs keep you coming back and just reward you only enough to keep you coming back. Gamification also creates communities for people with similar interests. In the health and wellness space, apps like Nike Plus or Strava create a community where you can track your fitness and training and engage with people who are doing similar things. When you create a community around a particular concept, it keeps users engaged. Strava creates monthly 5-kilometer or 10-kilometer challenges and many other different challenges that if users achieve, they get a badge. They also introduce challenges that partner with sponsors or other brands that bring in real prizes. And those competitions can be like tracking your time or your elevation gain or your distance completed, for example. Challenge, achievement, pleasure. Strava also has a kudos system where if I go exercise and post that exercise, the community of my friends that I engage with can give me kudos, which makes me feel even more of a sense of achievement and gives me more pleasure. So I go exercise again and get into that cycle of challenge, achievement, pleasure. I must warn you that gamification isn't always as simple as just giving people badges and points and expecting them to engage. For example, I could bring into questions of ethics, like for when you're rewarding people for doing things they should be doing anyway. Like rewarding people for recycling. Is global warming not an incentive enough to recycle? If we're rewarding people, to what extent should we be rewarding them? Sometimes we use gamification by giving users standards to follow and challenging them to achieve those standards. When you give users agency or control over how much they want to challenge themselves, it either works really well or has the opposite effect and causes people to feel demotivated or lose morale. Gamification is complicated. It's not as simple as just giving points and badges to a user and leaving it at that. Yes, there are different techniques and solutions that we can use to possibly make your chore-like activities more fun, but there's no cookie-cutter solution to every single scenario. But I'll leave you with this. We're heading in the right direction. As society heads into a more technology-driven direction, there's more opportunity for us to introduce gamification into our everyday lives. Thank you.